Have you ever wondered about the true origins of ancient Egypt? We're often shown images of a civilization that feels disconnected from its continent, a land of mystery standing alone in the desert. But what if I told you the story is far deeper, far richer, and profoundly African? Today we journey back in time, not just to the pyramids, but to the very roots of the Black Land, Kemet. Long before Greece built its temples or Rome raised its legions, a river carved a nation out of the desert. The Nile, flowing north from the heart of the continent, was the lifeline that connected deep inner Africa with the Mediterranean world. It was along these banks that black-skinned farmers, builders, and priests gave birth to the world's first great civilization. Archaeologists now trace Egypt's earliest roots south to Nubia and the ancient lands of what is now Sudan. These weren't just wandering tribes. They were organized African societies with rich traditions and complex leadership. Around 3100 BC, a pivotal moment occurred. A powerful leader, known as Narmer or Menes, united the lands of Upper and Lower Egypt. He wore the dual crown, a white and red symbol of a single unified kingdom. This marked the dawn of the Pharaonic Age, an era when Africans ruled one of the most advanced civilizations the world had ever seen. The evidence they left behind is undeniable. Look at their art, their statues, their tomb paintings. They depict people with dark skin, coiled hair, and broad African features. It's not just a modern interpretation. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus, who visited Egypt, described the people as black-skinned and with woolly hair. The earliest Egyptians spoke an African language, they practiced African customs, and they saw the divine in the world around them. Their entire philosophy was built on balance, harmony, and the promise of eternal life, values that shaped every pyramid, every temple, and every papyrus scroll. From this fertile African soil grew incredible achievements. They invented hieroglyphs, the first known system of writing, to record their history, science, and sacred beliefs. They pioneered medicine so advanced that Greek physicians, centuries later, would travel to Egypt to study their texts. And of course, they built monuments like the Great Pyramids with the precision that still baffles engineers today. This was not an isolated kingdom. Egypt's trade routes stretched deep into the African continent, bringing back gold, ivory, and incense. Its influence spread far and wide, from the powerful kingdom of Kush in the south to the lands that would one day become Ethiopia. Their gods, Isis, Osiris, and Horus, told stories of life, death, and resurrection that resonated with a profoundly African understanding of the cosmos. Egypt was the beating heart of early human civilization, a brilliant testament to African ingenuity, creativity, and vision. But as its fame grew, so did the eyes watching from afar. Across deserts and seas, new empires were rising, hungry for power and resources. They would soon seek to possess the Nile, and in doing so, begin to rewrite its story. The land of the Black Pharaohs had given the world its first great light, but that light was about to face centuries of invasion, distortion, and erasure. The struggle for Egypt's identity was only just beginning. After thousands of years of unparalleled glory, the jewel of Africa began to face the harsh winds of foreign conquest. Internal power struggles had weakened its rulers, leaving it vulnerable to the rising empires beyond its borders. The first to arrive were the Persians, sweeping in from Asia with their vast armies. They ruled Egypt not as inheritors of its culture, but as foreign occupiers. Their reign, however, was destined to be short-lived. In 332 BC, a young and ambitious Macedonian general marched across the sands. His name was Alexander the Great, and he entered Egypt not to the sound of battle, but to the cheers of a weary populace. To the Egyptians, Alexander wasn't just another conqueror, he was a symbol of stability. They crowned him as their pharaoh, and he founded a new capital that would change the course of history, Alexandria. Alexandria became a vibrant crossroads where two worlds met, African and Greek. Its streets buzzed with scholars, traders, priests, and philosophers. It was home to the legendary Library of Alexandria, a vast treasure house of knowledge from across the ancient world. But as Greek culture flourished, the original African identity of Egypt began to recede. After Alexander's death, his general Ptolemy seized control and established the Ptolemaic dynasty. This was a line of Greek rulers who spoke Greek, worshipped Greek gods, and governed an African population. Even the famous Cleopatra, the last queen of this dynasty, was of Greek descent, though she made an effort to embrace the Egyptian language and its ancient traditions. Under the Ptolemies, Egypt prospered, but its rulers remained foreigners in an African land. While temples were still built to the old gods, Greek art, language, and customs slowly took root, reshaping Egypt's image in the eyes of the world. Then came the final decisive power, Rome. In 30 BC, following the defeat of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, Egypt fell under Roman control. The land that had once ruled an empire now became the breadbasket for another. Its vast grain harvests fed millions across the Mediterranean. The Romans admired Egypt's monumental achievements, its pyramids, its temples, its ancient wisdom, but they also reinterpreted them. They framed Egypt's glory as part of Rome's imperial legacy, not Africa's. Slowly but surely, the world began to see Egypt not as a foundational African civilization, but as a Mediterranean province. Under centuries of foreign rule, Egypt's ancient faiths began to wither. The magnificent temples of Isis and Osiris were eventually abandoned, replaced by new gods and new philosophies from abroad. The African tongue of the Pharaohs gave way to Greek and Latin. With each passing generation, the memory of Egypt's black founders faded further into the shadows of history. Yet the land itself never forgot. The Nile still flowed north, and beneath its sands, the truth of a powerful African civilization lay waiting, silent but not lost forever. Egypt had endured invasion, colonization, and profound cultural transformation. But a new power was now rising in the east, one that would not only conquer its land, but would reshape its very soul. The Arabs were coming, and with them, Egypt's identity would be reborn and rewritten once more. When the Roman Empire fractured, its eastern half, Byzantium, held on to Egypt from the distant city of Constantinople. But for the Egyptian people, weary of foreign rule and heavy taxes, it was a time of discontent. They longed for freedom, but what came next wasn't independence. It was the dawn of a new era. In the year 639 AD, a new force, born in the deserts of Arabia, swept across North Africa under the banner of Islam. Led by the general Amr ibn al-As, Arab armies marched into Egypt, confronting the Byzantine garrisons. The conflict was swift. By 642 AD, the great city of Alexandria had fallen, and the land of the Pharaohs, after more than 3 millennia of its own epic history, became part of the growing Islamic Caliphate. The Arabs didn't just bring armies, they brought a new faith, a new language, and a new culture. Initially, the native Egyptians, known as Copts, continued to practice their Christian faith and speak their own tongue, a language descended directly from that of the ancient pharaohs. But change was in the air. Slowly, through trade, marriage, and gradual conversion, Arab culture began to weave itself into the fabric of Egyptian life. Islam spread along the Nile, and with it, the Arabic language, which would, over many centuries, replace Coptic as the common tongue of the people. This transformation wasn't a single event. It was a slow, generational process. Families converted to Islam, villages adopted Arabic customs, and new generations grew up speaking a different language, praying in a new way, and seeing themselves as part of a different world. But Egypt's deep African soul didn't vanish. It evolved, blending with these new Arab influences to create something entirely unique, an Arabized African nation. A new heart for this Islamic Egypt soon began to beat. In 969 AD, the Fatimid Caliphate founded the city of Cairo. It quickly blossomed into one of the world's greatest centers of civilization, bustling with magnificent mosques, vibrant markets, and brilliant scholars. It was here that the great Al-Azhar University was established, a beacon of Islamic learning that shines brightly even to this day. Under Islamic rule, Egypt flourished once again as a hub of science, philosophy, and breathtaking architecture. Yet, as the centuries rolled by, Egypt's ancient African origins began to fade from public memory. Its people, now largely Arab in language and culture, started to identify more with the Middle East than with the African continent that had birthed their ancestors. The sands along the Nile still held the secrets of black kings and African gods. But the whispers of that ancient history were drowned out by the rise and fall of new empires and new faiths. Egypt, once the beating heart of African civilization, had become the jewel of the Arab world. But this profound transformation wasn't the end of Egypt's story. It only added another layer to its enduring mystery. Centuries later, when European explorers rediscovered the magnificent ruins of ancient Egypt, they would stare in awe at its monuments and ask a fateful question: who built this? And in their search for an answer, they would bury the truth all over again. After the rise and fall of Arab empires, Egypt remained ancient, resilient, and eternal. But in the 19th century, a new kind of conquest began. This one wasn't waged with swords or scripture, but with science, exploration, and deception. Europe had turned its gaze toward Africa once more, and at the center of its fascination was Egypt, the land of pyramids, pharaohs, and secrets. In 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt, but he brought more than just soldiers. He brought an army of scholars, artists, and scientists. They weren't just there to conquer. They were there to study. They meticulously measured the temples, copied the hieroglyphic inscriptions, and documented every single relic they could find. What they uncovered sent shockwaves through the world, irrefutable proof of an ancient civilization so brilliant, so advanced, that many in Europe simply could not believe it was African. To protect their own narrative of racial and cultural superiority, European historians began to actively rewrite Egypt's story. They concocted theories arguing that such genius couldn't possibly have originated from black Africans. Instead, they claimed that ancient Egypt was the creation of a lost white or Mediterranean race, a civilization of outsiders who just happened to build their society in Africa. And so began one of the most audacious distortions in all of human history: the whitening of Egypt. Museums across Europe began to fill with artifacts taken from Egyptian soil, statues, mummies, and priceless treasures. But as these objects were put on display, the African identity of the people who created them was systematically stripped away. The faces of black pharaohs were hidden away or simply ignored. Schoolbooks began teaching that Egypt was the cradle of Western civilization, erasing its deep roots in the African soil that gave it life. The very word African became detached from concepts of genius, mathematics, or architectural marvels in the popular imagination. But history is a stubborn thing. It doesn't simply die. It lies in wait, ready to be rediscovered. In the 20th century, a new generation of African scholars rose to challenge this false narrative. Figures like the brilliant Senegalese historian and scientist Cheikh Anta Diop began using modern tools, linguistics, archaeology, and even early DNA testing, to prove what ancient sources had always suggested, that the ancient Egyptians were, in fact, black Africans. His groundbreaking work, alongside that of scholars like Chancellor Williams and Theophile Obenga, ignited the Afrocentrism movement, a powerful effort to reclaim Africa's rightful and central place in world history. Today, modern genetic and archaeological studies continue to confirm what the ancients always knew. Egypt's earliest and greatest dynasties emerged from the heart of Africa, sharing deep connections with the peoples of Nubia and Kush to the south. The same blood that flowed through those kingdoms built the pyramids, wrote the hieroglyphs, and mapped the stars. For centuries, Egypt's authentic African identity was buried under desert sands, buried under foreign empires, and buried under deliberate lies. But today that truth is rising once again. The world is slowly beginning to remember that civilization didn't begin in the West, nor was it born solely in the East. Its cradle stood proudly along the Nile, in the Kemet, the Black Land, built by African hands and fueled by African minds. As Africa continues to reclaim its history, the story of Egypt stands as a powerful reminder. No matter how many times the truth is buried, no matter how deep, it will always find its way back to the light. Because history is never truly lost. It is only rewritten. And now, at last, it is being reclaimed. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through history as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration. See you next time.